Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It's Chris and Ben for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 181. We are more than halfway through Skeleton Crew. We're talking about episode 5 tonight, and that is You Have a Lot to Learn About Pirates. And man, oh man, Ben, we learn a lot about pirates. There's a lot of world building in this episode. There's a lot going on with really, as I keep talking about every week here, this series does such a great job of answering questions, but continuing to build up hype, continuing to build up the stakes in this series. I'm loving it. We're going to get to it shortly. Milton wasn't able to join us tonight because if you're watching live, we are quite a bit delayed. Family gatherings between me and Ben both, so we've managed to do this at some point. But for the people listening after the fact, that doesn't even matter. We're here. We're recording a Star Wars podcast on the last week of 2024. It's our last podcast for the year, if you could believe it. There's been a lot of good shows throughout the year, so looking forward to starting off the entire year strong going into it. But how was your Christmas, Ben?
Good. We had the good typical Christmas family stuff, like the typical like dinners and those sorts of things. Unfortunately though, we do have a bit of bad news personally. Like, over the Christmas break, we lost my grandma, who's she's a longtime listener to the podcast. Like, she always like checking out our streams, and she always I had to give her a shout out tonight. That was kind of my week in Star Wars. Like, I had to give her a shout out because she's the reason I got into Star Wars in general. Like, if it wasn't for her, I would, have never been such a big fan. I would never been doing this podcast. And like, I'll never forget when I was like, I don't know, probably 7 years old. She was like, "Oh, hey, you'll like this movie with this Darth Vader guy." And it was, A New Hope. And that's what got me into it. She took me to a lot of the premieres when I was younger, like Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. And that was always like mine and her thing. And then even over the years is like, she got older. She was watching Mando. Every week she would watch Mando. She would call me the next day in the morning and be like, "Oh, hey, what do you think of that Mandalorian?" And like talk to me about that. And then even up until this point, until she just had passed, just a few weeks ago, like, I mean, she watched Skeleton Crew up until she passed on us. So like she was talking to us about Skeleton Crew, like I know it's like morbid to say or whatever, but like when she was in hospice, she was talking to me about Skeleton Crew, and it was just me and her in the room talking together and everything. Like, so it's cool that like she lived a long life, and she she really liked Star Wars up until like her final moments and everything. And it's awesome just seeing how like this franchise like really affects people overall, and impacts people's lives from, whether they're young, old, anywhere in between, and it spans so many years. So yeah, just wanted to give my grandma Bridget a shout out tonight on, just being such a big impact on my life when it comes to like everything, but especially, in this regard, in the Star Wars regard, because if it wasn't for her, like I said, I would not be here on this podcast if it wasn't for her introducing me to this franchise. So yeah, that was kind of my week in Star Wars.
Oh man, yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that, man. That really,
Yep.
oh man, that I've been along for the ride with you, updating me on all the information, and yeah, really sorry for her loss when it comes to her, because she seems like an absolute legend. Like you've been making the references to her for the whole 2 years or so, plus we've been making this show happen every week, and she almost seemed like an addition to the show in a way, where it's like, okay, what's Ben's grandmother going to be saying about the show this week? And that's awesome, because I personally have never had anybody in my life show me Star Wars. I just kind of did it through osmosis with a neighbor. I was over the house. Oh, there's Jabba the Hutt. Oh, what's this about? Oh, it's a big slug guy and a bunch of aliens. Oh, this is cool. Like, that was my way into Star Wars. And kind of sharing the spotlight a little bit with what you're saying here is the idea that I was actually just showing my niece and nephew Return of the Jedi earlier this evening, and we finished it. And so in a way, I'm that person for them that is giving them the information. We're talking about the movie afterwards. Oh, the themes of good versus evil, and anybody bad can be redeemed. nobody's lost forever with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, the ultimate sacrifice, and the, you know, the stuff about the little guy can always conquer the big guy, Ewoks versus the Empire. Like I'm trying to get that into their brains about movies aren't just plain fun. There's actual messages and importance that's embedded in the actual story itself. So for you to have somebody like Bridget to be able to guide you through these like age-old mythology, right? Joseph Campbell, as we talk often about on the show, like the hero with 1,000 faces and the hero's journey. The modern myth with Star Wars, George Lucas, giving values to up and coming individuals, up and coming humans, you know, getting this stuff that's out there to start to mold us into good human beings. So, hey man, like hopefully she's having a good time watching Outer Rim Transmission from heaven up there. She's tuning in right now. And that's great. But yeah, sorry for your loss, man.
Oh yeah. Thanks to you and everyone who's reached out. And like, you know, one little funny story about that, not to like just go into the you know, the being all the like the sad parts of things, just to transition away from the sad part of it. You know, funny story about it when you know, when we first started on this podcast, I'll never forget, I about fell over because we went over there one time, and actually it was around Thanksgiving a few years ago, like 3 years ago or whenever when he had first had started this this show. I think it was about 3 years ago now. We were over there, everybody was over for Thanksgiving before us, and I'll never forget, I about fell over because like me and my family were late, so everybody else was there. We walk in, and on my grandma's big smart TV, I hear you and Milton talking, and my eyes shot open. I was like, oh my Lord, she has our podcast on the TV in front of the whole family. And I walk in, and our podcast was on Thanksgiving on her huge TV, and I about fell over. Because I was like, holy moly. And she's like, look at this, Ben. He's on here on a show on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah. So yeah, that was quite the experience, to say the least. But yeah, so I had a lot of good times with this podcast, with her involved and stuff. And you know, this is no exception, because like I said, I was talking to her about Skeleton Crew up until like the final moments. So you know, good times, and it'll be fun talking about everything tonight.
Oh yeah, for sure. So there we go. I have a little bit of a show and tell for tonight, and one of these items was just given to me by my girlfriend as I'm sitting here in this very chair right before we hit the record button. I'm absolutely surprised because I tried finding this thing on my own out in the wild, sold out everywhere, but here in my hands I have a Thrawn Hallmark. I got the Ghosts a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, they have a Thrawn, and well, there's Thrawn in the flesh. So put that right next to the Ghosts. We got the Rebel crew forming. And then I also got this from my brother-in-law's older brother. I have a Boba Fett to go along with it. It's basically a controller holder or like phone holder or whatever you want to put in this thing. So yeah,
awesome.
It's pretty cool. I have a nice Elite Series black controller that would go very well with this Lord Vader holding him with his Force grip. So there's my little show and tell. But the main thing was like it was fun watching the end of Empire Strikes Back on Christmas Eve, and then we started halfway. We got halfway through Return of the Jedi, and it was like, okay, it's kids' bedtime. We got to put them to sleep, but they're coming over Sunday. We'll finish it. And then I was like, okay, those are the first 3 movies. And then I started, it was cool because like I went out of the room at one point. This is after we watched Return of the Jedi. Went out of the room. I went back into the living room. You know, my nephew is 5. He's sitting there talking to my sister, and he's telling her about the movie. He's like, "Oh, Luke Skywalker rescued his father. He was on the shuttle, and he was leaving the Death Star." And I was like, oh my gosh, I freaking did it. I got a kid to like Star Wars. It's kind of a stupid thing to worry about, but I'm like, this is great. Like, something I love is getting imparted on the next generation. And it's not because I'm making him say something. Like, he's doing it on his own accord, excited about Star Wars. I asked him, like, what's your favorite part? Like, lightsaber battle, or space battles, or like lightsaber battles. Like, yeah, I was like, when you get older, you'll probably like my space battles more, like me. But that's great. That's great. So it's cool for them to be present, to be taking it in, to be asking questions, and I'm already telling them about, okay, the next 3 movies we're watching are about how Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader. This is going back in time, and I was trying to explain to them about the order of these movies, because like anybody could be telling you different ways. I'm like, we're just going with release order, right? We're gonna go episode 1, 2, and 3. Then we're gonna go into the future with episode 7, 8, 9. And I know guys like, guys, hold on for a minute. I know it sounds crazy. We're jumping around, but trust me on this one. This is the way your uncle watched it. This is the way you're going to be watching it. And then after that, we'll finally understand who this little Grogu guy is, because they're still perplexed. Like they've seen Yoda obviously in episode 5 and 6, and they're like, "Is that Baby Yoda?" I'm like, "Not really." And then they're looking at the tree, and the tree has like 3 or 4 different Grogu ornaments, and they're like, "Who is this guy?" I'm like, don't worry about him yet. This guy's in a series that takes place after the movie you just watched about 5 years later. So I've tried my best to try to like not confuse them too much, because there's like all these other movies that we have to watch. I'm like, we're gonna watch the movies first, and then we're gonna do the series, and then when you get older, by that point, we'll watch Rogue One and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's true though. Like when Mando came out, not just like the hardcore fans, like, general people. I know, like grandma, my aunt, or my uncle. My uncle is just a very, he's a Star Wars fan. He just watches it. When the new Star Wars is out, he'll watch it. Basically, he'll, what I mean. He's one of those types, just casual fan. And like when he first saw The Mandalorian, he was like, he texted me and was like, just to double check, is this like Yoda when he was a baby, or like what's going on here? And I was like, no, like, because some people like make that jump because they see Grogu and they're like, I mean, the only other character most people know is Yoda, so like they just make that assumption.
Yeah, so it was a good time all around. Last couple days, just getting the new generation involved in Star Wars, which I'm always worried that, like, will Star Wars get to a point where, like, the next generation just thinks it's too dated and it's just not interesting enough? But I kept looking at them as they're sitting on their couch. I'm like looking at them, and they're like paying so close attention to this stuff. They're glued to the screen. I'm like, somebody would say something and they're not paying attention because they're so locked in on the story. And I was even telling my sister, I'm like, yeah, I've seen this movie like 50 times. And every time I watch it, even on this beautiful OLED TV, it still holds up, that space battle. I just can't fathom how in 1983, George Lucas and ILM was able to put together something without any CGI, all miniatures with that space battle. Like, it just blows my mind how far in advance they were for their time. Incredible stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, like John Campea always says, the Return of the Jedi space battle is still arguably the best space battle on screen in movie history. There's like, because no other movie has anything like that. And for like, just the overall stakes and everything involved in the battle too. Like, it's not just some random dogfight. It's literally like the rebellion, the emperor potentially staying alive, like all these things, like the stakes. And then there's just overall, it's a really good battle. Like I, like you said, for the time period it was made, because like, it was released in 83, but it was really, more like 81, 82 they were developing it. So it's like, for that time period, that long ago, like for them to make such a good battle where they didn't do many touch-ups after the fact, like it still holds up so well to this day. And it just, that's why, like, every time I see, like, I don't want to sound like such an original trilogy fan. I mean, because I love those movies so much, but like, when you watch the original trilogy, there's just such like a special touch to those 3 movies. Like you said, it just like hooks people in, the lines, the way they're shot. I don't know. It's just like just something about it, I guess. Like it just, I guess that's just the magic of Star Wars, really.
Yeah, for sure. So getting into this week in Star Wars specifically, we have the beginning of the end for the Battle of Jakku maxi series. This is the beginning of the last and final miniseries called Last Stand. Last Stand issue number 1. Me and Matthew did not record anything this week. Usually we do the Tractor Being over on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel where we recap and dive in deep to the latest Star Wars Marvel comics and Dark Horse as well. I have my review on the channel for this very issue since we're taking a break for this week and next. But this issue really shows you Adelhard, who is the main antagonist to Leia and Luke. He has come back from the dead, even though it was only very shortly after the last issue that we found out that he might be in a precarious position. But anyways, the main thing is Han Solo is returning to save the day with a beard. So if you want more information on that, go ahead and check out my video on the same YouTube channel you're watching. By the way, I didn't mention already, if you prefer to listen to podcasts, we are available on any podcast streaming service such as Spotify, such as Apple Music. Just go ahead and search Outer Rim Transmission, and whether it be on YouTube, whether it be through a podcast, please go ahead, send in your feedback, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star, whatever kind of metric they use that'll help spread the good vibes of this podcast. We need that Star Wars positivity in the underworld, everywhere. So getting into it, we're not usually covering the news these days because there's so much to talk about with Star Wars Skeleton Crew, and that's what we're going to dive into right now. Skeleton Crew, Season 1, Episode 5. This one's called You Have a Lot to Learn About Pirates. And, well, we have a special message from our co-host, Milton. So I'm going to start off our discussion by going ahead and playing that right now. Here we go.
So I just finished the episode, and I have to tell you, I absolutely hated this episode. I don't know what it was. I thought the pacing was so off. I still hate Wim. I think he's a terrible character. The first half really threw it for me because I was like, what are they trying to accomplish? Like, we know they need the coordinates to add Atten, but the way this episode was structured was poor in my opinion. And clearly the kids, yes, they're kids, but I feel like they wrote them really, really poorly. And for them to just continue to act so childish, it's just annoying at this point because you would think they've been on this adventure, they would start maturing faster in the sense of they have to get out of their childlike behaviors. However, they still continue to do that dumb kid shit, especially Wim. He's always wanting to touch something or just, I don't know. He's just weird. And then Fern, not willing to yield. It's stupid. Just yield. You're not going to beat a grown adult who happens to be force sensitive. The only thing I liked about this episode was that he pulled the Qui-Gon Jinn quotes about, your reality and your perception and that type of thing. That was cool. But other than that, though, man, I really did not enjoy this episode. If I had to score it out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. Maybe. I mean, the visuals look great. The aesthetics was fine. Some of the pulls from the prequels was cool, but nothing special to me. I'll probably never rewatch it again. So 5 out of 10 for me.
Well, thank you, Milton, for your analysis and thoughts on episode 5 of this series. And, me and Ben are going to disagree with you, Bill. And we're going to talk about all your points because you do make some good points there. But me and Ben really enjoyed this episode. First of all, for me, I guess I'll just start it off. This is my favorite episode of the series so far. I think what this episode does is it really kind of dives into this other realm of Star Wars that we haven't seen. It really gets into that piratey feel, the Indiana Jones exploration. It gets into the Goonies aspect of, going underneath this place. It's got some of the best humor. It probably has the best humor out of any of the episodes so far. Stuff that's inferred, stuff that I really liked. That, me just watching it, just busting a gut laughing, such as the moments when Jod is trying to have a serious conversation and you're bringing 4 kids into a really lavish suite and they're jumping on the bed and he's trying to have a serious conversation with these kids, and they're just jumping on this bed. I'm like, that's what every single kid would be doing right now in this situation. Like, you have this really nice, fancy place. You're gonna kind of have fun. And he's raising his voice. He's doing all. I really liked it a lot. But as far as getting answers, we're getting answers to things, but we're also including new mysteries and different things as well at the same time. So much for me was going on. So much for this episode. You go ahead and take it, Ben. I think I'm having a little bit of a camera issue. I'll let you give your thoughts, and I'll finish mine in a sec here.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, for me, for starters, I have to say, this is why I always love when Milton's on the podcast, because he keeps it real, and I just love. I always love his analysis. It's always thought out, and he keeps it 100. That's the important thing on our podcast. Because a lot of people won't keep it real, and that's what I like and respect most when it comes to like our podcast. It's like everybody, keeps their true opinions, no matter what it is. So I like that. I like that. But for me personally, I absolutely loved the episode. I thought it was the best of the series for sure. And I just think, like you mentioned, Chris, I think the episode hit off on a lot of points that had good humor. Like you said, the jump out of the bed, I loved just the way it was shot, the way the lines were, the whole like yield sequence between Jod and Fern. I thought that whole thing was kind of like, just comedic, like as you'd expect an adult versus kids in a fight, basically. Like just that whole sequence, I thought was done really well and like shot just played out well comedically. And even some of the comedic parts of like the pirates going like yelling for Jod when he trapped him in that room with the acid, like Ooh. Even though that's like brutal, just the way it is, that's kind of like what you'd see on like a Saturday morning serial, like, oh no, you got us trapped in here, you know what I mean, like type thing. So I like that. And then just like some of the like, I don't know, I just really liked the way they did this episode. Like you said, all the implications. Of course, we'll get into all the details and everything, but I really think they're just continuing to push the ball forward, and this show continues to progress for me better and better each week. And it just, again, like I was telling my buddy, I think the main important thing about this show is it just seems like it's a neutral to positive show. For me, at minimum, it's running at like if I would be on like a grading system at a B level or higher. And like it just continues to progress, and like that's the important thing for like I think the Star Wars fans is just give us a good, solidly received show. And this show, just like this episode specifically, hits it again. Like it hits all the check marks. We get some action, we get some intrigue.
Yep.
Get some comedy. Like I really liked it.
The pacing was so good for this episode. The pacing was so good. It felt like an hour episode to me because there was so much stuff that happened in this episode. There's a lot of exposition that's given about how did you say his name again? Captain Raynaud or something like that, or exactly?
Yeah, I think Raynaud is what it was.
The idea that we're getting so much world building with this pirate character. I'm already completely fascinated. Is he from the High Republic? Is he from the Old Republic? Like, I have so many questions already.
Renat. It sounds like it's because at first I thought they were saying Captain Ren, but I rewinded it. It sounds like it's like Renet, like Renat. I think.
Okay.
Because they were saying it like Ren.
Even going to the first sequence, like I already knew this episode was great when the comedy was perfect. When they have 33 strapped down to that table with the ropes, and they're all like, yeah, this will secure him, he won't be able to do anything. Right at the end of the scene, he just effortlessly like breaks out of the ropes. Just like simple little like nods that were like right there. Like the comedy in this show is done so well with like the delivery. Also another part where it's like they mentioned like John was talking about like, oh yeah, the concubine killed him. And then they're like, "What's a concubine?" Yeah. And then he just ignores it or something. Like,
he says he's like, okay, enough stories for today.
Like, we are dealing with
love it.
12-year-olds here. We can't divulge all the information, even though they just went to a port where there's clearly a red light district or something going on in the background there.
I think that's the cool part about this series. It's hitting such a good balance for, adults can watch this show, obviously, because it's just Star Wars. But if a kid's watching, like if your niece or nephew's watching this show, Chris, they have no idea. And then in the show, they don't address it because they're like, hey, that's a story for another time, basically.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I continue to love Jod more and more. I think Jude Law is the best addition to Star Wars this year. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna put it down, plant the flag. He is my favorite new character in Star Wars. Jod Na Wood, Captain Silvo, Dash Renton. Gosh, the guy's got like 7 or 8 names at this point. I can't remember them all at this point. But I just love how effortless he feels. He feels like such a good scoundrel. And then the idea that he's kind of good with these kids. He's got this chemistry with the kids. I absolutely love the sequence. And Milton mentioned this in his review about the thing between him and Wim and him. When they were sitting there. And it's great because it's not great to see kids cry. Let me put it that way. But like last week we seen Fern kind of breaking down. This week we see Wim breaking down. The kids are human. This is not all fun and games all the time. They're having a great adventure, but it's also that they're kids and they're missing their parents and they're missing their home planet. But the idea that Jod is like suddenly giving off all this Jedi vibe. Cut off your attachments, cut off your parents. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's a little bit much. Like, cut this off, cut that off. Your focus determines your reality. I instantly perked up. I yelled. My girlfriend was like, she just got disturbed because I just went, he said the thing. He said, what? That's Qui-Gon Jinn's line. It's Qui-Gon Jinn's lines. He must have gone to the temple. He must have, known about Qui-Gon Jinn. This adds another layer to this character because then he's talking about the Jedi philosophy about attachments, and it's going, wait a minute, like, yeah, this guy could have just been a Joe Schmo that had Force, but I really do. The more I see of him, I really do believe that he was at the Jedi Temple. He's old enough to be.
Oh yeah, I super speculation jumped it to. Maybe he was like a youngling when, even though obviously it could be just some saying the Jedi use yada yada yada, but hey, speculation is part of the fun of all this, and who knows? He might have been around when right in the temple when Qui-Gon was still around. So I don't know. I really like that part of it though. I like that they're adding the layering of the potential Jedi side of it, but then also here's the other part of it too, Chris. Are they planting Okay, so he potentially has the Force background, but is he using the cut off your parents line, all these things? Is this more of a tactic even to get the kids to stay in piracy and form his new crew? You know what I mean? Because hey, cut your parents off, do this, do that. Maybe he's going to try to have these kids be his new crew because, he had the issue with his crew at the beginning of the series.
Yeah. Very, very true. Very true. This almost felt like either a Star Wars comic or a Star Wars novel for me, for the fact that we get to see something really new in Star Wars, and that's the kids and Jod going to an adult spa getaway resort. It's just... This is something you see in the novels, you read about all the time, just these really exotic, kind of extravagant places. I mean, the closest thing to it is probably Canto Bight in The Last Jedi, but that was great. And it really brought a lot to the galaxy. Just seeing all these different creatures. This was so Star Wars. It was spawned from episode 4. And they didn't have to do the whole bar scene again like everybody wants to do. It's let's have all these aliens in a completely different environment. Let's have Hutts eating aliens trying to serve him food or whatever the heck the poor guy was trying to do. Let's have Munes in the background in a mud thing with the Thorians. Let's have some big, what is it, from Rogue One, Borgullet thing.
Yep.
Cthulhu thingy, like in trying to help them out in the, like the underbelly of this spa thing, and then the idea that like John was basically he's a great scoundrel character, giving this person like bribing them with the Old Republic credits. And then she's like, "What about the wise masters?" And it cuts to them just like big complete imbeciles. Like clearly they're not who they think they are. So like that's what I mean. The comedic timing, the inclusion of all these awesome looking aliens. It's just, what'd you think about all that with the whole spa thing?
Well, I thought the whole spa sequence was really intriguing for that reason. Like, that was one of the first things because, see, as you know, yesterday I was watching through all these episodes with my cousin who hadn't seen them yet, and when we got to this new one, that was one of the first. Well, one of the big takeaways he kept saying throughout this whole series was like, "I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. Like, this feels like he kept saying." Like, and this was unprompted too. He said this feels like it's just like kind of a nice like reset, like refresh to Star Wars, where it just feels like it's like his exact words was, "It feels like we're back to the basics of what made Star Wars good and fun." And like this episode hit that with this whole sequence with the spa because it's like you get all these exotic aliens, like they're doing all these things, and then you even get on top of it, like like you said, you don't need a bar sequence to have a bounty hunter. One of the waitresses basically is she's a bounty hunter. So like, it's like you have that character there undercover, and then she continues on to act like a waitress and stuff, and then it's just it's really really I don't know. I just really like the way they're going with this because it just feels like we're getting back to kind of what the basics of what made Star Wars really good.
Mm. Yeah, so are you talking about the bounty hunter pocket?
Or yeah, well, the one that like came up talking to him or whatever. It was like
The
saying,
white one. She's got like the very like.
yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. And then she was like, oh, and then like continued on like with her character basically.
So I think she's an Umbaran. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but like that's what struck me is she looks like an Umbaran. Like almost like Sly Moore or
Yep.
the character from the High Republic. Gosh, I forget her name, Oshla or something like that. Somebody will correct me in the chat or after the fact. But this is what I like about Skeleton Crew is we're getting so many like familiar alien species, but we're also bringing back some ones that are just like very obscure. So that to me is a huge win. Like we're also introducing new aliens, like the thing we've seen that I mentioned, a Cthulhu looking thing, and then we also have the new aliens that were seated in the examination room with Neil and all them. The one he has a crush on, like that's a brand new Star Wars species, I believe. And going back, I'm kind of scatterbrained all over this episode because I really just there's so much I want to talk about. But going back to the beginning, having the espionage going on with the parents down at Adam, you got the father of Wim, like that whole tense. It was tense, like. What John Watts and crew are able to do is have that really good comedic timing, but also amp up the stakes and amp up the suspension tension with the scene with him and that creepy ass droid where it's like, ooh, show me your left hand, show me your right hand. And I love the editing because it's just like him in the office with Fern's mother. And she's in on it too. Obviously, she wants her daughter back, and the administrator's not really doing much, and that's a secret that a mystery that continues to go forward. But what'd you think about like the parents' role in all this so far? That they're actually being more proactive at this point.
Yeah, I thought that was really clever editing. Also, I think that's like just the way. I think we're gonna also see like it's gonna be kind of sprinkled in because I don't think we'll see the parents like a lot down the stretch here. But I think it'll be sprinkled in enough where it feels kind of like a almost C plot where it's like there's something going on at Atten where it's like it's not all just a perfect utopia, And I just think, when the parents try to like buck the system and want to like find their kids, they're gonna like maybe we get in trouble with the supervisor or something, where like what if the parents get like taken in and like, it leads to something with them, and then when the kids get back, like, maybe, just playing with, like, maybe what if that's what turns Jod back? Like, say Jod like is a scoundrel for the next few weeks, and then he feels bad for these kids, and then helps them out or something, helps their parents out. Like, maybe it's something like that, because like there's got to be something that's like, I don't know. I just don't think Aten's gonna stay peaceful this entire series. Like, I just don't see that happening.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not on that one. Um, what are other like? Let's getting into the vault sequence here and seeing about all the treasure. I feel like somebody must have a video on YouTube already about analyzing all the background artifacts, obviously the lightsaber, but there's probably a lot of other goodies. I remember going back to Solo Star Wars Story with Dryden Voss's lot, the first yacht, the first light, with having like Mandalorian armor and almost like a something else, and if that was a Star Killer armor, or that might have been from something else, but yeah, I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there was, it might have been in Solar, it might have been something else. I think there was like, it was like the Boba Fett holiday helmet, like the all white Mando helmet. I think was in that. I think, but yeah, like you said, the vault in this sequence was really really interesting, because like that was the first thing I was thinking of. Like, oh man, I gotta like look in the next few days, because someone's gonna have this totally broke down, where it's like, all the things you missed in the vault in episode 5 of Skeleton Crew, blah blah blah, because like they there's gonna be cool little Easter eggs, and of course it's like my mind instantly goes to, whose lightsaber was that?
Oh yeah, I
Like,
mean,
how would a pirate gotten a lightsaber?
yeah, that is a good point. I mean, it's golden, so my mind immediately went to the High Republic. But could it be? That's the thing, right? It's like John knows about this guy's reputation, like he's legendary. I mean, it's been years and years since the Republic, so I don't know if it's like a recent. Like, I really hope that this is a way to open up doors to the Old Republic, even predating High Republic. When we're talking about sets, we were talking about this last week or the week before. It's like they talk about Old Republic credits, and like we often hear about Old Republic, but that could also mean like the Late Republic with Obi-Wan and Dooku and all those sorts of characters, not necessarily like Avar Kriss or beyond, like in the High Republic. So yeah, it's another thing is like, yeah, how does somebody get a lightsaber? Jedi are not supposed to just leave these things around. You might think that, oh man, did he actually kill a Jedi and steal the lightsaber type of thing?
You know what would be really wild headcanon? What if like you what if this pirate, Captain Renat, what if he killed a Jedi during like that pre-Phantom Menace, early Phantom Menace era? So then it kind of like pseudo retcons Qui-Gon and Anakin's talk, where Anakin's like, "Oh, what if you killed a Jedi?" and Qui-Gon's like saying how like someone really powerful would have to be able to kill a Jedi. Like, what if it's like, hey, referencing to this character? like, like I think there's a lot of clever things they could do with things like this.
Oh yeah, for sure. As far as some other things here that I want to talk about is the overall look. I mean, the production quality on this, I don't know what the budget or anything like this. All I know is it looks good. All I know is it looks good. Whether it be ships like panning through the ships, like looking as it's entering, I forget the planet's name. Something with an L, Lanupa or something like that.
Yep.
Panning across, seeing the ships coming in, seeing the Onyx Cinder, which we finally get an acknowledgement of the name finally in episode 5, which is a really neat callback. They do a phenomenal job, even with that creature I keep talking about, the Cthulhu-looking creature on the underbelly of the spa. Look great, look really fantastic stuff. They're working with their budget the way they need to, and everything looks great. I mean, generally the Mandalorian stuff has always looked good, top tier stuff with the Mandoverse. With Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni really making sure, I'm sure that like this stuff isn't gonna look cheap, right? This is that high grade. This is that tent pole Disney Plus content, it's got to be up to stuff, you know?
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, this show, the budget for it was 136, so it's not even like crazy expensive. It's kind of in that normal range for the Mandoverse shows. Like most of the Mandoverse shows are in that like 120, 130, 140 range. Um, so like this falls right in that ballpark, and it hits again, and you notice like, when they're not using the volume, like it's like, oh, it rings a bell. Like you can make a good thing where, like, don't get me wrong, I love the volume, but like this shows an example. Like I don't think they did a lot of volume work on this show, and look how good it looks. Like it looks very good. Like you have locations, you have, like you said, look how good these aliens look in this show. And I just really think they're doing a fantastic job with the set design, with the costume design, and just the overall, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, almost like the exposure, the way they're lighting the scenes, I think is done really well because, like, you can't have you can't skimp out and have a really well lit scene because you get exposed super quickly if you have a cheap scene. And like we're having a lot of really well lit shots because like a lot of shows that are more cheaper budget, like I love the Arrow show for example. But let's take that as an example. Arrow, they had to produce so many episodes. I think it was an average of like $1 million per episode. But so many of those sequences were dark sequences because when you're in the dark, you can cover up a lot of the flaws of a scene. And on this show, I mean, this entire episode until we were into the caverns and stuff, it was all lit up. Like it was all lit up and exposed to the camera, which it's so impressive seeing shots like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like the idea of the team splitting up too, right?
Yep.
You have the different characters going one way, the different characters going the other, and they intersect. And it's like it's a great comedic moment as well because you see Jod and I think it's KB and maybe Neil that are like outside doing stuff, and then they were like called to help out Fern and Wim, who at the time are like, oh gosh, like there's this big Cthulhu creature, like we're gonna get killed by this thing, we need your help. They go down there, they're like, oh yeah, this is our friend over here, he's just chatting with us, he's gonna help us out. Like it was like this real like subverting expectations for the situation of, oh, this is not going the way you think. Kind of like the same way that episode 4 went when they are marching into the fog thinking they're going to battle for their lives, and then Jod shows up and he's like, yeah, I saved the day. I got the Opies, here you go. Again, it comes down to editing. It comes down to kind of comedic timing on levity and different things like that. Like this show just keeps nailing it, man.
Oh, it 100% does because like you said, you nailed that reference. Like when I was rewatching it yesterday, that still hits again. Like that whole sequence in the fog, it hits. Like this show or this episode, like these comedic moments, like you said, you're meeting at like that Cthulhu creature, like it hits. And I don't know, I'm really liking the comedic timing, the way like John Watts and everybody involved. But like you said earlier, like I think Jude Law's interaction with the kids cannot be understated enough. Like the way he acts with the kids, it's so good. Like just his comedic timing between him and Wim. But I really like just his back and forth with Fern in this episode. I think was really good. Of course, with the whole yield sequence. Like I just really think, like you said, to me, Jude Law's completely taken the stage for the best Star Wars character this year. I think. I really liking what he's doing, and it's so impressive because like he's hitting on all these notes, like these comedic moments, like they're just hitting. Like there hasn't been a down moment with him yet this season or this season so far, and like this moment, like with this meeting with this creature, was just another one of those good moments.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to know that I'm not actually the only one who thinks he's maybe one of the best characters in Star Wars this year. The last thing I remember Jude Law in was Captain Marvel, and before that, I'll be honest, I didn't really watch him in anything. So pretty much for me, like this guy is a new character, a new actor that I'm not super familiar with. So now it's ingrained on me. And looking at like the future, like we have 3 episodes left. I fully believe that this is the moment where the kids are really gonna hate this character, obviously,
Mhm.
because they're threatening their lives. But I think the trajectory is he's going to come back, save them from Brutus, and they're all gonna love him again. And then hopefully he doesn't do a heroic sacrifice. Please don't do a heroic sacrifice, because I need to see more Jude Law in Star Wars. I want to see him in the upcoming movie, Jon Favreau's Mandalorian and Grogu. I want to see him in the Heir to the Empire movie as like maybe a talent card kind of character, a smuggler that has the Force though. And just the idea, going to the end of the episode here, the idea that we have the legitimate pirate Jedi, this guy wielding a lightsaber. What damage can he cause? What is he about to do with a freaking Jedi's lightsaber? I'm so intrigued. What a way to end the episode.
Oh yeah, I loved it, and I loved that they even added, when that whole sequence was taking place with the yield sequence, like even when the one kid had when Wim had the lightsaber, like I love how John was like, be careful with that, because like he's seen lightsabers before, so like he knows it's deadly, and I just really like that they're building this potential archetype. I mentioned it a few weeks back. We have all these different Force archetypes running around right now in the galaxy. It's like you have him as a pirate. You have Luke doing his like Jedi Academy stuff. You have Ahsoka doing her like pretty much independent contractor stuff. You have these different archetypes of Jedi, and it's cool seeing Jude Law's character. And like you said, I think that's probably going to be the trajectory, I would say, where it's going to go, like what you predicted. They won't like him for an episode. They'll get into something, and then he'll probably save the day. And like you said, fingers crossed he doesn't self-sacrifice, because, oh man, I could see him like being like a self-sacrificial type character, because like, it could be like one of those self-righteous like moments where it's like, I've been a scoundrel all my life, and now I finally found my path, so I'm gonna, do the right thing and save these kids. And, so they don't have to live a life like me or something, I could see something like that happening, unfortunately. But I really hope he survives, because to me, I was so concerned about Jude Law coming into this series, not as an actor, because he's a phenomenal actor, but I was concerned I was going to see just Jude Law in the series, because that's always my number one concern when you bring in a huge actor into Star Wars. Are you going to see them, or are you going to see the character? And for me, he's selling the job as this character perfectly. Like, you give the wise moments, like you mentioned, the Qui-Gon quotes. He's delivering the Jedi quotes really well. And then now he's delivering like this pirate role really well. And like you said, Chris, imagine him in one of these upcoming movies, or even if he's like in a role, say long term. Like, what if it's a few years from now? Like, even after like the Filoni movie, like, what if we get a Mando season 4 down the road with Mando and Grogu, like a pirate Jedi type guy? That could be someone Mando could interact with. Like I could see that happening. Or what if, because I just think there's a lot of options you have with this character. I really do.
Yeah, it's really great to see him really taking the center stage and really taking the horns and going ahead with saying, "Oh yeah, I want to." You feel the passion. This guy is all the interviews, stuff behind the scenes. Like, he really loves this stuff. It's not just doing it just purely for the money. It seems like he is really just enthralled with just being on set and being absorbed by all the wonderful things he's seeing around him, the joy of the kids and all that. It's really great to see. Some highlights for the kids, speaking of which, the KB moment, I think, really rang true when they're surrounded by those poor guards who have no right to be fighting these pirates, and she pulls out a wrench, and it's just like, all right, what the heck are you going to do this? and she's brilliant. She's able to just like blast these guys off of the thing. And I do want to make a mention that it's interesting that she's concerned about being on this planet because the humidity or something of like the moisture and whatnot is gonna like screw with her cybernetics. So
Yep.
she does have a medical condition of some degree, because obviously, this thing is attached to her head. She's got to be able to, and you get to see her react here and there with the smoke. So I do like that attention to detail of like, okay, this is a character that is vulnerable in some certain situations with her condition. So I liked seeing that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the thing is that was an overlooked little detail. I know it was either in like the second episode, I believe. I think it was maybe in the second one. But I know because I remember Star Wars Meg pointed that out in a video that one of the characters, it was one single line they mentioned about her health, like something to do with like her health. It was something health related because I remember Meg highlighted that in one of her videos weeks ago when the show first started. So it's cool they like now they're wrapping around too. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's your answer to how Jod goes good. Like maybe she has like something major health issue happen and like Jod's like, oh crap, do I continue being this like mean pirate or do I help a kid in need, like maybe that's going to be your crux to turn him good. But yeah, like I think like her acting, like all the kids I really liked in this series. I really liked, for me personally so far, like in this episode too, just based on like the acting from like the whole yield sequence was big for me. But I think I really like the kid that's playing Fern. I think her acting has been really good. Like from last week when she was like crying and like saying I just want to go home and all these things, to this week dealing with Jod, and like I think they've done such a good job. And then Neil, of course, like Neil's character, we've all mentioned it. Like he's kind of like us in this situation. Like, he's kind of like he's learning and getting better, like little skills here and there on the adventure, but he's still kind of like the cowardly lying character. And I'm really, really liking his character a lot. But I think Neil, for me personally, Neil and Fern are the two standouts of the four kids.
Oh yeah. I do want to mention about Wim because, oh my gosh, like this show could be so meta at times, because when he ignites the lightsaber and it's upside down and then the lightsaber just goes rolling around, like that's just some fun speculation or like fun stuff that I would think about in my head from time to time. Like, how would a lightsaber react if it just like hit the ground upside down? Like in the moment, the kid is frightened, obviously. His friend is in danger. He's just picking this thing up and it's like, oh crap. My head is not on completely straight here. The lightsaber just goes spiraling out of control. Like that to me was just, not everybody's perfect. You're gonna make mistakes. And that was just really funny for me at that moment.
Oh yeah, I thought that was a really good moment. Like you said, you think about those things, like what if you're holding a lightsaber the wrong way and it ignites? Like what could happen? So like it is cool just seeing them kind of address like little meta things, but they're not doing it too on the nose where it's like a conversation, like they're standing in their ship and they're like, hey, don't drop the lightsaber upside down. You know what I mean? It's like it's just built right into the story, and like I just think that's the nice balance with this show. They're like doing fun things like that, but they're still staying on task with the overarching story of the characters and like the plot and everything.
Yeah, so are there any other topics based on this episode that we haven't touched you want to talk about? Because I think I've said all my piece on these so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, for me, I think we've covered most of the things that I really thought about. Like I said, I just think Jod continues to be like the overall big standout character just because of how well Jude Law's portraying all these different like Jedi to pirate to like scoundrel, like talking to the people in the spa and like everything in between. And his portrayal's been really nice. So I've really liked that aspect of it. And I just think, yeah, I just think there's a lot of potential with his character. That's what I was gonna get to, actually, to kind of end this off with a little speculation idea. Especially since, like, you, Chris, you're like the master of Fallen Order and all of these things. So here's my thing for you, a question for you. Do you think Jod has, like, obviously, like, if someone has the Force, they always have the Force. But do you think it's a situation where, like, he potentially is maybe a youngling that escaped or something, or do you think basically he's covered up his Force abilities for so long because of Inquisitors? Obviously, growing up through the Empire era, he knows about Inquisitors, and then for two, is it like, we've seen these little bits of things. We've seen him use the Force for the key, so that was just a little thing. And then now it just seemed like, with him using the Force to grab the lightsaber and pull it to his hand, and just like the moment of that, like, going to his hand, and just like, just the way they shot it. Is it like he's like, the Force, like the fire inside of him is like, like firing back up to where, like, he's gonna be like fully tapping back in or something, versus it potentially being covered up because of Inquisitors or something, or like what do you think? That was kind of like my point I was going to bring up, just as an open-ended question to, like, ask you, like, an idea of what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's clearly evident that it's sort of like he might have been going a long time without using the Force, because, like how Kessis did, he went like 5 years without really using the Force at all in fear for the Inquisitors identifying him. So, Jude Law, I think he got to the point where Jod Wood. Yeah, it's funny how I can finally say that thing effortlessly now. I have a feeling we're not going to call him that much longer. By the end of the series, we'll have his actual name. But, yeah, I think, he just became so used to not using the Force and relying on his, like, other skills, piracy, being a scoundrel, to get him through. So now when he is, like, he's starting to open up to it, like doing the small things, like lifting a key or lifting a knife into your hand, and then the ultimate thing is like grabbing a lightsaber and igniting. That's pretty bold. I mean, that's pretty much like, okay, I am fully in tune. This is a way to tune myself to the Force. Lightsaber, the Kyber crystal specifically, is a living entity, essentially part of the Force. Kyber crystal is like a living organism almost. So he's able to connect with the lightsaber. That to me signifies, I think, the next episode we're gonna have a close to fully powered Jude Law, John Wood, back into the swing of things. Yeah, because I mean, even look at Kanan Jarrus and Rebels, and he was trying to be careful about the Force as well from time to time. So it looks like, everybody that was a Jedi at one point, it's like riding a bike. You'll be able to get back to it again. It might take a little bit of a warm up, but after a while, you'll get it back. So yeah, I think that's the case here.
Oh yeah, that's kind of like the direction I was thinking, but I of course had to bring that up since you're like, all your Inquisitor stuff and everything. And I think the interesting part about that is they might show like a display of his power at some point, because, like, you know what I mean, it'll be like him just beating up on some generic pirate characters, probably, I'm assuming, just to, like, lay the groundwork. Like, maybe that'll be something in the next episode with his character. Like, what if we get a moment where, he takes out some pirates, just as a moment, even for, like, us as an audience to see how powerful he is, but also the kids as the audience to be like, whoa, this guy means business.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't got much longer to wait. As of right now, we have less than 2 days to go before the next episode, and I'm not going to be able to watch it until like the next day, because I'm going to be out celebrating New Year's Eve. So I will have to just stay off social media at all costs. I'll be a bit preoccupied anyway, but might have to make some arrangements with the host to say, can I just use Disney Plus for like 40 minutes tonight? And they'll have no idea what the heck we're watching, because they don't watch Skeleton Crew. But it's like, let me just give me like 45 minutes and I'll be back. But no, but it's good. It's good. So yeah, I will throw it to you. What were your final thoughts and score out of 10?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall for me, the show is going in a really good direction. it it continues to move forward. Like, to me, this is the closest we've felt, or not even this is the closest. This is how we felt during Mando season 2, in my opinion. Every episode, it was like better, 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 better. Like, this show just keeps getting better and better and better by the week. And this episode is no different. It was the best episode of the series so far. I loved every part of it. I loved the whole sequences we talked about, spa sequences, the action sequences, the historical implications. I mean, heck, who knows, Chris? Maybe they'll drop like a 20 comic line on whose lightsaber that was or something eventually. But like, I think there's so much potential with the series and the actors involved. Like I said, I'm loving the kids that are playing these roles. They're doing a great job, specifically like Fern and Neil. And then I really am. I think Jude Law is the standout of the series for sure, and he's the standout for Star Wars acting this year. Like, his character just fits so seamlessly to this galaxy. Like, whether it be, like, I think the best part about his character, honestly, his acting is, I could see him, if they cut out the Force stuff, I think he could be a great just scoundrel character.
Mm-hmm.
But if they cut out the scoundrel stuff, I think he delivers the Jedi lingo well enough that he could be a Jedi character. Like, I could see him like selling as a Jedi character too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I just think that's why they hit it out of the park, getting an actor the caliber of Jude Law. So I'm so excited to see where his character goes, and I hope he lives through this series. I really do. But yeah, so overall for me, I just, like, there really isn't much wrong with the episode that I could pick apart personally. So for me, I have to give the episode a 9 for all of those reasons. And then, as Milton stated earlier, he gave it a 5 for all of his. How about you?
Yeah, I will repeat kind of what I said at the beginning. Whether it be the mystery that we get solutions for, why the Onyx Cinder crashed, why they're even going after Adad, we even touch upon that. Just the idea that I think we kind of guessed it, like they're printing money there. That's Old Republic credits that is invaluable. We see how everybody's reacting when Jod is giving the credits to everybody around, or Wim is giving the credits to the fairy guy and all that stuff in episode 2. Like there's a big significance. They'll literally be rich, and it's like if every pirate story, it always ends up with gold. It always ends up with the hoard of treasure. So it falls right in line with all that. And just the comedic timing, the world building, the relationship between Jod and Wim, the huge cliffhanger with Jod with having the lightsaber. There are huge moments, some really laugh out loud moments. I got to give this a 9 out of 10. I know we've been literally like the same score every episode, and I'm not just trying to rhyme with you. I literally had that in my head. I was like, yeah, this is a good 9. Because I've been keeping track. I think I gave the last episode an 8. The other two were 8.5. I always hold out hope there's going to be something better. I feel like there still could be like a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10 out there for me somewhere. So I think a 9 is a good place for me to hover. We have Dark Nerdy Gonzo. Thanks for joining us in the chat. He's also giving it an 8 out of 10. And I think he said earlier that this is his favorite episode of the series. So same as us, our favorite episode of the series. And we also hope for you guys to join us next week. We're going to be at more of a normal time at our usual 7 p.m. spot next Sunday. So join us then. Oh, actually, we have a revision. Dark Nerdy Gonzo is actually giving it a 9 out of 10. So there you go, 3 9s out of 10 here on live on Outer Rim Transmission. But as I was saying, we'll be back next week. So for more on that, you can go ahead and subscribe to youtube.com/Starrapter. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Outer Rim Transmission, on any podcast app that you listen to. And where can people find Milton and you, Ben, on the internets?
Yeah, you can find Milton on X at MiltonWeber7, or his Instagram, where he's pretty active there, like posting fitness stuff. And I'm sure with the new year, he'll probably be like posting fitness stuff, because I'm probably going to get into that myself as well again. You can find him at Milton7Weber. And then you can find me on X at RealBenMaynard, or Instagram at RealBenMaynard. And like I said, I might attempt getting back into posting workouts again. We'll see, but stay tuned.
Yeah, and then I also have a cool video that I put out earlier in the week, yesterday, specific to be specific, and that is my roundtable discussion of Game of the Year for 2024. I was joined by my buddies, coworkers, ex-coworkers, friends in general, JT, Johnny, and Josh. Dude, this brought me back to the old ORT days, Outer Rim Transmission days. This was just under a 3-hour episode that we all recorded. It was a long one. It was a long one. It was one that was so long, I had to do an emergency bathroom break because I was like, I can't hold this any longer. I thought this was going to be an hour, and I'm sitting here having this water, and it's like 3 hours later. I'm like, all right, that's how long the episode was, but it also goes to the quality of how much we were into the discussion. We just kept going on and on and on. It could have gone for probably another hour if we wanted to, but yeah, that's available also to download and listen on this very podcast app that you're listening to, or it's on YouTube. So there you go. I direct you to watch or listen to that if you're involved with gaming at all. We have some good commentary on that. So first of all, or last of all, I should say, Happy New Year to everybody. This was our last episode of 2024. 2025 is looking big for Star Wars. We got Andor, we got the Visions, we got Star Wars Celebration in Japan, where I'll be giving you guys the intel straight from the source, and whatever else may come about. We don't have any announcements of any games. We don't have any announcements of any new animated long-form series. So there's a lot of good stuff that still could be teased and announced later on. Bunch of new merch. Hasbro, apparently they're making a Visions guy from the Duel figure that was just data mined earlier today. There's a lot going on, but yeah, so far 2025 is shaping up to be quite good for Star Wars fans. So until next year, for Ben, for Milton, for Chris, aka Starrapter, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you always. End transmission.